Referencing freaks a lot of students out, and I see a lot of students avoiding it altogether and just hoping it'll go away, but it's not going to. It's going to follow you all the way through college and all the way through university as well. You have to learn how to reference. It's not that difficult once you get your head around it, and that's what I've tried to explain in this video. We're going to go through why referencing, how to reference, and then we'll do an example. So why bother referencing? There's a few reasons you reference. First of all, it actually sort of shows how much research and thought you've put into your actual assignments. That's probably one of the primary reasons to reference. It also helps the readers understand the context of your arguments, where you're coming from, the information you've read, how you've structured your argument. Probably most importantly, you're acknowledging the authors whose information you've read and who you are getting your ideas from. This is really important. Imagine you had a breakthrough concept or idea that is your intellectual property and someone just stole it and published it as their own. Acknowledging your authors is really important. And lastly, you really want to avoid plagiarism. Plagiarism is poorly understood, but it basically means you're presenting someone else's ideas as your own. And I see a lot of students do this completely unintentionally. They don't mean to plagiarize, they've just didn't realize they should have referenced. You can reference in certain situations. One situation is if you're going to directly quote more than one word of something that someone has said or written. I see quotes used quite a lot. I think people feel like they're quite powerful, but in reality, in your science reports, it's not really something you have to do often unless you really want to directly quote someone's words that you feel are quite powerful and pertinent to your argument. More commonly, you're going to reference when you're paraphrasing or summarizing someone else's work. And you're doing that to acknowledge the fact that it was their idea and that's where you got your information from, as well as to sort of support your own ideas and to help make your argument. If you're really unsure, I think the best bet is to reference. You can reference a whole bunch of different sources of where you get your information. Books, websites is probably the most common thing students use these days. Journal articles when you start getting into a bit more in-depth research in year 11, year 12, and definitely in university for primary resources. Newspaper articles are quite a relevant source of information. And images. A lot of students don't know that if you just take an image or a graph from Google image search, you really have to go find out where that image came from and reference it as well. The main referencing we're going to use in science courses is Harvard-style referencing. Now, there's more than one style of referencing. This video focuses primarily on Harvard-style referencing, which has two different components to it. It has an in-text reference and your references list at the end. And quite often students complete the references list at the end and they completely forget about the in-text referencing. The in-text referencing is fairly straightforward. It actually only contains the surname of the author, the year of publication, and usually the page number of where you got the information from. That's not always relevant, the page number. The first two are more important for year 11 and year 12 referencing. And then the reference list at the end is actually just a complete list of all your references and contains the entire details of your source of information. So let's go through an example. I found this article when I was researching for my assignment on stem cells, and it's about stem cells being a possible cure for blindness. And in the opening few paragraphs here, it contains information that is really critical to my assignment. It explains that scientists from University College of London and Moorfields Eye Hospital have actually transplanted photoreceptor cells into mice, that this has enabled them to transmit visual information to the brain, and that this could be possibly an unlimited supply of healthy photoreceptors for treatment of blindness in humans. So that's pretty critical information for my assignment. So I'm going to copy and paste it across to this example sheet here. So this is the information to be referenced right here. Alright. Except if you just put that straight into your report, you are plagiarizing. You are taking words that someone else has written, someone else's work, and put it straight into your report. That's plagiarism. What you have to do instead is something called paraphrasing. And so I've got an example of that here. I took that information and I came up with what I thought was a good summary of the content that I wanted to take out of that information. So instead I've said researchers from the University of College London and Moorfields Eye Hospital have successfully transplanted light-sensitive photoreceptor cells into mice. The cells were derived from stem cells and could be a source of photoreceptors to help treat blindness. So it doesn't contain all the information above, but it contains the information that I wanted to take out of that reference. Now I have to do two things. I have to include an in-text reference and a reference in my reference list. When I want to do that, I first go to a reference guide, and I have an example of information from a reference guide which I have provided you guys. And in this particular case, I know that I got it from a web document because I got it off the internet. There are different rules for newspapers, books, etc. So it's really important you always go back to your reference guide as a reference for you to reference correctly. If I didn't say reference too many times in the one sentence there. Anyway, so here is an example here of an in-text reference which contains the last name of the author, or authors in this case, Simon, Smith and West, and a year. And that's it. So why don't I go back to my report and find the author. Alright, so here he is. Whiteman, Honor Whiteman. So let's go ahead and take that and put it in brackets, just like it's represented here, except I'm going to put it at the end of the information that I've sourced. So here we go. We know we don't need the first name, you only need the last name. We also need the year that it was published. I was taught to put a comma in between these bits of information. The example up above doesn't have a comma. Just follow your reference guide. So Whiteman, what year was it published? Let's see if I can find a publication date. Yep, looks like July 2013. So 2013. Of course, I want to make sure that all my text is the same. There we go. That's it for in-text referencing. And now I know that the information contained in this paragraph was referenced from Whiteman 2013. Now we have to actually go do the reference itself. Let's go back up to our guide. In this particular case, it looks like it has the author's name, the year, and the title. So let's go down here. We know that the author's name is Whiteman. Very importantly, the reference above had last name first, and his first name again was Honor. And in this case, the example up above suggests that you just have to use the initial. Then the year it was published, 2013. Then it looks to me as if there was the title of the article in italics. So Here we go. Let's go put that title in our reference. Whoa. Again, let's change the... and we want to italicize it. So what's next? Looks to me like the publisher. In this case, the Reserve Bank in Australia, but in our article, the publisher is in fact the website it's published on, which happens to be MNT, which is Medical News Today. I'm going to take this URL while I'm here, and you'll see why in a moment. So, Medical News Today, and then viewed and the date. So, viewed 19th of February 2014, and then finally the URL of the site from which you got that information. And there it is. That is a completed reference in your reference list. Why do you think it has to be surname here and surname first in your reference list? The simple explanation is that it enables the reader to simply look up Whiteman in your reference list and to find all of the information, so they will be able to go back to that original source. So that is your in-text reference, and this is your reference in your reference list. Finally, in your list of references, you really need to keep them in alphabetical order. So if I had another author, Smith 2009, and let's just say Aiden 1998, my references should be in alphabetical order. And I hope that was somewhat helpful. Make sure you ask your teachers if you're unsure of how to reference. We're more than happy to help.